We're going to go with a draft right now on the Sleeper app, though, just to get things set and squared away. PPR draft, 12-team. You can see the settings there on your screen. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. We've got a tight end, a flex, and 5 bench spots to get us going. We'll be drafting from the 1.10 position today. How about this mock draft? Jahmyr Gibbs going number 1. I'm a big fan of Jahmyr Gibbs. Not sure I'd take him quite that high, but that is interesting. We're left with not a lot of receiver options. We could go Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm going to reach, though, below ADP or above ADP, rather, and take Devon Achane. Because coming back to me, I believe that we might have, as we've already got our first sleeper crash of the draft season. There it goes. They took Brock Bowers there at team 11. I like the idea of getting at least one locked-in running back at the beginning of drafts this year and then being able to hit the wide receiver values in later rounds. Not always am I forcing myself to take a second running back, but when you look at the fact that 8 wide receivers went off the board in round 1 of this mock, I'm sitting here staring down Derrick Henry and Ashton Genty. I'm going to take Henry and line him up as my second running back, kind of backwards on those ADPs. Normally, Henry might go a little bit earlier than Achane, but I bet by the time draft season really arrives, we will get to a point where Devon Achane is pretty handily in the back end of that first round of your drafts. And that is the way that I see it here, as I might have messed up the screen there for a moment, but we're back. Let's go ahead and take a look at the way things unfolded in round 3. We've got 2 quarterbacks that have gone off the board since we last selected. And this is, again, full PPR settings. And so I'm understanding that taking a bit of a backseat on wide receivers early could hurt me, but I'm not that worried about it. I think there's going to be some good receiver value in the mid-rounds to the extent that I'm actually going to go quarterback here. This is a year where I am considering, and again, this is just the first mock draft, ADP values are definitely going to change on Sleeper as time goes on with this, but I am intrigued by the idea of going elite quarterback this year and seeing how that could line up my roster. We still haven't taken a receiver. We're on the way back here in the 4th round, and that's a point in time where even though Rashee Rice is expected to be suspended, I'm going to trust my abilities to draft late values at the wide receiver position. And I'm going to take him because I think by the time we get to the playoffs for fantasy, Rashee Rice's suspension will be long gone as a topic of conversation, and he is the number 1 for Patrick Mahomes. So, again, we're taking some early season hits potentially at the wide receiver spot, but we're doing it with a long game in mind. I draft these 12-team leagues, and look, we've got 5 bench spots, which is actually a little deeper than some of the leagues that I play. You're probably playing in leagues that have 5 or more bench spots, but I'm feeling pretty decent about where we're at right now through 4 rounds. We're going to continue to look to hit the wide receiver position. That's a little bit of a tough spot to be in here in particular because we are seeing more running backs toward the top of the ADP queue. But how about going for somebody like Olave or Jalen Waddle? I will take Waddle in this spot, and I'll mention I don't love drafting toward the back of the round because look at all the wide receivers that would have been great for our team that went in the middle of round 5. Sutton, Pickens, Devontae Smith, Metcalf, and Jameson Williams all going in a row there in the middle of the 5th round. Zay Flowers also went earlier in that round. I would have loved to have paired one of those guys with Jalen Waddle, maybe coming back here in the top of the 6th round. It's not easy to do that all the time, but that would have been intriguing to me. We're on the clock here. We're still going to hammer wide receivers. Do you want to go Tataroa, McMillan, Travis Hunter, or Chris Olave? We're going to take Olave in that spot since we were right down there at the end of the clock. It's not to say that that is the pick I would make every time in that slot, but as I was thinking through my roster a little bit, even though there is some uncertainty with Olave because of the quarterback play there in New Orleans, I don't really know what we're going to expect. I feel like Olave is probably an interesting play there because of the ability that he has shown, and he's locked into that lineup. Tataroa McMillan as a rookie, I just felt like maybe that would be a little riskier. You might disagree with that interpretation. Travis Hunter, certainly I consider to be a little riskier for a lineup that doesn't have Rashee Rice in it in the early weeks. That was the thought process behind the direction that I went there. We haven't selected a tight end yet. I'm happy to wait on tight end in this year's draft, but there is one guy that I think has a good season. He's at the top of my ADP. I will go ahead and take Mark Andrews to knock out the tight end spot in my lineup. I'm regretting it already because Shakir and Cooper Kupp were 2 guys at wide receiver that I was willing to consider and just did not end up getting either of those guys to fall back to me. I'm not panicking, though. I'm in the 8th round of a sleeper draft here, 12-teamer, PPR, and I've still got guys like Deebo Samuel Jaden Reed, Stephon Diggs on the board. I just think, and look, Deebo Samuel, new team, new situation. It might not be as it always was for him in San Francisco, but I'm also going to be able to stack here Jaden Daniels with Deebo Samuel. That's in my flex spot, remembering that Rashee Rice is going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks is our expectation. So we're going to have to temper expectations early. Samuel's going to be our wide receiver 3 rather than our flex. But remember, by lining up a really good quarterback and a tight end that we think can actually be in the top half of tight ends this year, along with those running backs, Achane and Henry, who are designed to carry my team, I don't hate my wide receiver core. But I'm going to continue to attack the receiver position here because we do have to loom and consider the Rashee Rice suspension that's coming. So at this point, I'm going to tap somebody like Jaden Reed to continue considering that he might be in my flex spot for the weeks that Rashee Rice is absent due to his impending suspension. But man, do we feel decent about our wide receivers. And look, the ADPs are going to change. This is not necessarily going to be the way that you draft when you get to the end of August and early September. But the reason we do this on this channel and we start in late July is to get you ready for when those changes come. I'm really not looking anywhere else. I could consider the running back board, but I'm going to go ahead and take an upside rookie like a Jaden Higgins here, a little bit above ADP, but knowing that I've got a long wait, he's not getting back to me. Look, this is a rookie for the Houston Texans that maybe he ends up becoming the favorite target of a C.J. Stroud-level quarterback who is potentially looking to bounce back compared to his numbers last year. In fantasy, wasn't that good. They had a lot of receiver injuries, and so the Texans went out and drafted heavily to that position. And at the point that we're in now of this draft, where I am building my bench, I'm always going to be looking toward rookies, looking toward upside. Speaking of upside, Justin Fields being here in a double-digit round is really compelling to me. But because of the fact that I did take Jaden Daniels with that third-round pick earlier in this draft, I'm not necessarily going to take a second quarterback, but if I were to do it, he would be the one that I would look to. Just looking at the top of ADP right now, I do see a couple of rookies that fit the billing. Oh, we're going to take a pause. They did end up taking Justin Fields. That's okay. Who I was going to take, well, hold on a second. Going to pause. I set this to 30 seconds, which makes it a little bit tricky. I'll probably need to consider going back to minute timelines here. Give me just a moment. We're going to take some of these names off the board. We're not cheating. This is just a mock, but I wanted to illustrate really the way that I could put together a roster that could suit my needs. And in fact, the player that I'm going to take, that I was talking myself into taking, is who the CPU took right after me, which was Luther Burden III out of University of Missouri, which is the school that I went to, which is kind of fun there. The question is, how do I take myself off of auto draft? I honestly don't know how to do it. Oh, there you go. Get me off of auto pick. There we go. So we're going to get back in there. I'm going to take Luther Burden III because I feel like because I loaded up at running back early in the draft that I don't necessarily need to be fearing the fact that I've only got a couple of them. You know, it's kind of like the hero RB build, except for you're really doubling down on it by taking a second name as I get back on draft. So I've got 2 running backs that are still going to be the strength of my team. I just may not have a ton of depth at the position. And at the end now, we're going to clean up and pick a couple of running backs to wrap things up. At the onesie positions, I'm not really too concerned about the idea that I would need an additional tight end or a quarterback. So I'm looking at running backs here, and there's a name at the top of my ADP chart that I really think is a good handcuff to have this year, and that's Isaac Guerendo. I think Guerendo behind Christian McCaffrey is going to play some. I think the 49ers realize that at this stage of McCaffrey's career, you cannot let him take the workload that his body had taken earlier in his career and expect him to remain healthy. So Guerendo is a handcuff that I love for this type of build because of the fact that I've got 2 locked-in running backs in Devon Achane and Derrick Henry. I can grab a Guerendo, and then I'm going to grab one more flyer. In some realms, I might take Jalen Wright, the backup to Devon Achane. And there's an argument to be made that I should, because if anything happened to Achane, that's the way that my lineup could end up really cratering because I don't have an obvious replacement, and Jalen Wright would end up being a great choice. But because I only selected 3 running backs so far, I'm going to diversify and give myself another handcuff of Braylon Allen, who I think is going to play alongside Breece Hall a decent amount for the Jets this year. So I really couldn't like this team much more than I do, with Jaden Daniels leading it off at quarterback, Achane, Henry as my starting running backs, Rice, Waddle, Olave, and Debo are my receivers, knowing that Jaden Reed can slide in for Rice during however long the suspension ends up being. I've got Higgins and Burton as wide receivers on my bench that potentially build value. Or look, if they're not doing much, I'll trade them or put them on waivers for somebody that I need at a different position group. But I think with the way that I built my roster, I will be able to be patient with Higgins and with Luther Burden, two rookie receivers that by the middle of the year, I think are more likely to be producing for fantasy teams. And it doesn't matter that I don't get that early production because I'm not going to need them for my lineups. Garendo and Braylon Allen are simply two handcuff types of players that I think are going to be interesting in case something should happen to the starters on those teams. I really like the way that lines out. Apologies for a couple of the technical difficulties, just getting things lined back up again. But here's a look at the draft board as it stands, and really highlighting my team right here. Feel pretty good about the way things unfolded. Is it going to be more difficult when I keep doing that? I keep minimizing my screen, and that can't be minimized because it's on video. Is it going to be more difficult to get things figured out when the drafts actually happen and people are, pushing up the ADP values that I have identified in this video? Absolutely, but I still think it's going to be a fun draft season with a lot of potential values, honestly, flying across the board. And speaking of potential values, if